Hey guys, this is Rob from RuinWorks, back with our latest release. This is the scene entitled The Dial of Sun and Moon. This was the Patreon voted scene. It was going to be a dial room, and I decided to give it a theme of sun and moon. It's a 3-level scene, though 2 are only playable. So we have our first floor here, as well as our second, in which characters can run around on. The third level is just to hold this token, to which everything is attached for the rotating platform above, and I'll get into that in a bit. So the idea behind this scene is that it is a dungeon puzzle. There are some traps and some ideas of where you can place some creatures. The main feature of the scene, again, is this dial in the center of the room. So there's actually 2 rotating dials here. They can double click on one of these 2 exclamation marks and request to turn the dial. If they say yes, a sound will play and this central dial will rotate. Now the objective of rotating these dials is to align a symbol in this area, which I have called the focus point. And if you hit the far right interaction point, it will turn the other dial around the outside. So depending on how these are aligned, different things will happen. You might notice that there is a 3rd interaction point here in the middle. This will just reveal a bit of a clue of how the puzzle works. I've gone into detail on this in the journal note, and I'll try going over as much of it as possible here. It is a bit of a complicated scene, more than I expected when I was trying to put it together. Things did not quite work as I'd hoped, so it had to get a bit more complicated. So essentially the scene consists of the style room and 4 other chambers. The sun room here, the sunrise room in the bottom left. On the bottom right we have the moonrise room, and on the right, the moon room. This dial needs to be rotated into the right alignment so that each of these rooms can be opened. So right now it's not currently in the right alignment for any of them. So if a token were to step in front of the door, this little plaque in front will turn red for 5 seconds, indicating, nope, you haven't done what you need to do. See, it turns red. Of note, to get this to turn red, there is a new macro that I've placed in the RuinWorks macro compendium that will need to be imported into your world so that Token Magic FX can use it and change the glow macro to show red instead of blue. Also, Token Magic FX is required for the scene. I think I will make that into a dependency for the RuinWorks modules because I have been using it quite a bit. Although it's not strictly necessary, it just helps visualize what's going on. So as you can see, since it's not in the right alignment, the plaques in front of each door will turn red, indicating that not all the proper steps have been taken. Going back to this clue, it reads to enter the sun, moon, or their rise, meaning the moonrise or the sunrise, in search of their hidden prize, whatever's inside the rooms. First, you must align their visage, which is done by rotating the dials. Show the image of the sun, the moon, sunrise, or moonrise. Follow their guide, which means read the steps in front of each of their doors, and then step before them. That's stepping on the plaques themselves, and when they're ready to open, they will turn blue instead. So if we take one of our tokens, bring him up to the first door, he can read this plaque in front of the door, which reads sun, for those who bask in the brightest light. So in order to open the sun door, you would have to follow this clue and also align the dial to the correct symbol, which would be the sun. Since we already have it aligned to sun here, you would have to bring this portion of the sun into the focus point for it to be aligned properly. The second part was this clue that is written on the plaque here, for those who bask in the brightest light. That indicates that players must run around and light all 8 of the braziers in the scene. So that's just for the sunroom. The basic way that this will end up working is if you look in the top margins of the scene, we have our dial counters. So whenever dials are rotated, either the inner or the outer, it will cause these token counters to move down 1 step. When they move down 1 step, they may enter a hashed tile. These hashed tiles, shown here, will move down the door counter tokens 1 as well. Because we have 1 token in a hashed square beside the sun, we can see that the sun token has moved down 1 as well. Essentially what these door counters count is the 2 dials are in the right location. So if there's both dials were in the right location, the sun would be down 2 squares. And then the last step is by using the clue to activate the last step. Then once this token has entered the last step, it activates the tiles in front of each door. I know it is quite complicated, but there's just 3 steps. Align the sun, follow the clue, step on this plaque. Door opens. Okay, so I'll go through it quickly for the sun. So if we bring our token back here, we can now rotate dial until the sun is in the right location. You
can see the symbol of the sun is now shown here. If we go back up quickly to our dial counters, because both of them are have now been rotated into the sun position, the tokens that the token counters have been moved into the sun active tiles, and then this sun counter has been moved down 2 squares, 1 for each tile. So the third step for the sun room was to ensure that all the braziers are lit. How do we count the braziers to make sure they're all lit? If you go into the left margin here, you can see there's a brazier counter. We've only lit 1 brazier, so each brazier lighting will move this brazier counter down 1 step. If I were to take my token again and go light another brazier, so now we have 2 lit. The brazier counter is now on 2. So it'll only activate once it reaches this hatched tile, once all 8 braziers have been lit. Now there's only 6 on this first floor around the edges of the room. If you go up to level 2, there are 2 more that also need to be lit. I'm not going to go around lighting them all, but I will demonstrate how this works. So just to reiterate, when a token steps in front here, the plaque in front of the door turns red. However, if I were to light all 8 braziers, and I'm just going to short circuit it by moving the token counter right into the hatched tile, which has now pushed the sun counter down into its active tile, the last step, which activates the tile in front of the door. So now if my token is to step on the plaque turns blue and the door opens. So that's the basic steps for how each of the doors will open. You need to align the dial and follow the 1 clue before each door. Now each room is also equipped with a trap, which is also related to plaque. So the plaque says, for those who bask in the brightest light. When you come into the sunroom here, there is a sun and there is a moon symbol. If you're basking in the brightest light, you would want to walk on the sun. So there's no trap active here. However, if you decide to walk on the moon side, the trap will trigger, the gem will be sent, notification saying they've stepped into the sunroom trap. Do you want to activate the trap? You can choose yes or no. No, nothing will happen. If you hit yes, a sound will play, and in the case of this room, an electrical tile will show. It'll only show for a little while. Keep in mind damage and saving throws are not automated. So once you are in the room, token will see a rune at the far end. If he approaches, he can use the interaction point here to touch the rune. If he touches the rune, you can see the rune starts to glow. It's the sun rune. I'll also point out that the sun rune up here will also glow. So these 4 symbols will start to glow once the altars in each of the 4 rooms have been touched. What happens when all 4 have been touched? This rotating platform in the middle of the room will rotate automatically. So now the sunroom has been completed. First step of opening this rotating floor has been accomplished. To do the rest of the 4, you would have to open each of the doors. So for instance, for the sunrise room, it indicates for those who stand with the rising sun. So first you would have to align dials into the sunrise symbol, which I believe would be the sun symbol, except the bottom half is solid. I'll look through this, see if I can get it quickly. There you have it, the sunrise symbol. If we now shoot up to our counters here, you can see the sun symbol is left at 1. That's because our brazier short-circuited, so it is in the correct location. If I was to move this out back to 2 where this should be, you can see that the sun counter has moved down to 0. And now rather our sunrise counter is at 2 because the 2 dials have been aligned in the correct location. Now there's one more thing that needs to be done. If we go back to the clue, it says for those who stand with the rising sun. At the bottom of the scene here, there are 2 sets of stairs. That is where you are rising, and one of the sets of stairs has a sun on it. So a player will have to stand with the rising sun, so that's why I have a second token out. Once he stands in the square, you can see that the sunrise token has moved down into its last location, which will activate the plaque in front of the door. So previously, this plaque had glowed red. It was not activated properly, but now when a token comes in, it opens. Trap in this room, again, the plaque red for those who stand in the rising sun. So the trick here is to only step in the squares where there is the rising color. So here it would be this top tile, and on the left it would be this middle tile where the sun is kind of rising, where it's getting brighter. So if we walk along those lines, no trap triggers and you can get to the room properly. However, if you step anywhere else in the room, you'll get the same dialogue indicating the trap has been sprung. And in this case, I put fire here. And you can do the same thing for these. If we come over here, we can touch this rune. Now we can see it glowing. You can see it glowing slightly before touching the rune. That's because I've only hidden the tile, not switching its image from invisible to visible. The GM will always see a slight glow, but players will not. And if we come back up to the central platform, you can see the sunrise symbol is now glowing as well. I did this also to give the players a clue what they need to do. So obviously they see 4 spots. They see 2 are now glowing. They know another 2 should be set to glow as well. We come over to the Moonrise door. See it turns red and the door does not open. We would need to rotate dials into the Moonrise location. And work. And I can see that this is the moon symbol. If you want to double check, we can scroll up to the top of the screen and see that our moon symbol has been moved down 2 locations, which means that our 2 dial counters have stepped into the appropriate squares. And our sunrise still at 1 because we still have a token standing on the stairs in the right location. So the Moonrise clue, if we walk over to it, reads, for those who straddle the line between darkness and light. What does that mean? I'll show you. If we take our token up to the 2nd floor, zoomed out a bit, you can see a sun in the left and a moon in the right, indicating that the left side of the 2nd floor is day and the right side is night. So where would you straddle the line between light and dark? It would be between those things. So we have this sunrise and moonrise symbol here in the middle. Players will need to step on this to activate the last step of the moonrise door. So we just need a token to enter the hashed square. We go back down to the ground level and check our counter. Our moonrise has indeed moved down 1 step. Fortunately, I aligned the moon, not the moonrise, so I'll go back and fix that now. So here we can see that the Moonrise symbol now being placed. If we zoom out, go back up to our counter, it should now have moved the correct 1. Yep, so now our Moonrise has been moved down 3. Plaque in front of the Moonrise door should be working. So now, previously it turned red. If we step in it now, it turns blue and the door opens. The clue for this room indicated that it was for those who straddle the line between darkness and light. So this room has a torch lit in it, and essentially players just have to walk on the edge of that light. So I have noted, because it's a bit hard to see which squares were safe and which weren't, but as long as players stay to the safe squares, which is where the edge of the light is, and I'll just show you that by going to the light tool, you can see the edge of the light kind of runs through these. They can get safely over to the rune by double clicking on this rune. It will show the symbol, make the symbol glow. Make the 3rd Moonrise symbol glow here, and it will have also moved down our runes touched counter down to 3 since we've already done the sunrise, and now the moonrise. When this runes touched counter reaches 4, it will enter an active tile which will automatically pan everyone's view to the location of the rotating platform and then rotate the platform. And then just to demonstrate what happens if you stray off of the safe squares, you'll get another notification saying a person has stepped on a trap. Do you want to use it? Hit yes. An overhead green tile will show up. This can either be poison or acid or even necromantic damage, depending on how magically you want, and it's anywhere they step, the same thing will happen. Lastly, at the moon room, so I'm going to realign these back to the moon. So I should also note, each activation only rotates each dial 45 degrees. So to do a full circle, 8 steps. You'd have to click it 8 times. Luckily, you can start another activation before the last one has ended, so you can do it pretty quickly. So we see our moon symbol here. If we come up to the top, we can see that our moon has been stepped down 2 again. If we go over to our door, is that enough to open the door? Nope, it turns red. So we have to read the clue on the door to figure out what to do. And this one says, moon for those who search the depths of night awaiting the morn. Again, we can go up to level 2 here. So the main part here is for those who search the depths of night. If our 2nd floor is day on the left and night on the right, the deepest night would be found in this far corner. So that's where players would have to search. So you can bring a player here. They can conduct their search however you want to do, make whatever check they need to do to find it, and if they do find it, you can reveal the secret to them simply by clicking the reveal secret button. If you do that, your players will then be able to look in here and see an interaction point. If they move closer, they can double click on it, and they will be prompted to reach their hand in and touch the gem. If they hit yes, a light will start to glow here, and that was the activation requirement for the moon, the last activation requirement. You can see the moon has now been moved down its third step in the activation requirements. And if you go back to our second token here, who couldn't previously enter, if he steps in front of the door now, it opens and reveals the passage. This room has a bit of a trick rather than a trap, so if players walk in, they can walk right to the end. If they double click on the exclamation mark, touch the moon, nothing happens. This is unique to the moon room. If you go back to what the clue said, it's those who search in the depths of night awaiting the morn. So right now you're in the moon room, which is the depths of night. You must await the morn, which means the dial has to be set back to sunrise. However, the second trick to this room is, so the dial must be set to sunrise for the dial to be active. However, if you move the dial at all, the door will close. That means that player has to stay in this room while another player switches the dial to the morning. So I'll bring down the token from the second level, have him move this dial to the sunrise. So if you hit yes, the door to the moon room has now closed automatically. This does not happen with the other rooms, and the player must stay in here while their teammate helps move the dial to the sunrise position. So we'll do that quickly. Now, while I'm doing this, I would also mention that in my own personal game, I would probably have something like a wraith or ghost appear in the moon room while someone was doing this, so there is a bit of time pressure to have things happen. Or maybe it only happens once it is set to the sunrise. I just thought that could be kind of the trap for this moon room. So now you can see it is set to sunrise. What has this done? Well, on the left, we have a moon sunrise counter. What happens here is this token essentially moves along with the sunrise squares on the dial counter. So every time the dial counters enter the sunrise squares, it also moves this token down one square. So when the sunrise is aligned, as you can see it is here, this token enters this hashed area, which now activates the interaction point. Touch Moonrise, again that should be moon, I'll fix that for next release. You can see the door opens. He's panned over here to let him know that something's happening over here, and then this central portion of the room rotates and a passage is revealed to your players. Last thing I would just like to mention is up here at the top, we do have a transform button for room G. All you have to do is click this to give you some different options. So there's stairs before it changes into a portal that is active. I think this looks actually pretty cool. And then I just have, in case they were here searching for something, I have an altar with a bunch of different items on it, some weapons, and also some tomes. I figured I'd put the stairs here in case this leads into a tomb or some sort of a boss room. I also put the portal there for the same reason. Maybe this is a gateway to the astral realm, Dial of Sun and Moon. Another theme you guys might want to explore here is it could be representative of someone who has fallen into darkness, gone from the sun into the night, the darkness. So it could be good for maybe a lich's tomb or a lich's phylactory, or maybe even a fallen paladin. And this was built as his tomb, describing descent into darkness from light. So that's the scene. Hope you guys like it, and let me know what you think. Before I forget, I should also mention that there are various reset buttons. So if I were to hit this reset button beside the brazier counter, it turns off all the braziers automatically and resets the counter to this correct location. If you come up to the top, there's a reset for the dial counters. So resetting this will reset the dial to the original starting position and reset all the counters into their correct starting positions. Lastly, there's also the room's touched reset button, so this will reset all the doors and also the rooms to be invisible. You can hit the master reset button, which essentially hits all of the reset buttons and also resets the central platform. So probably the main one you want to use is this main master reset button. Set everything back to the start.